Shocking archaeological discoveries that could rewrite human history. Hello, and welcome to the Ancient History channel. My friend, have you ever wondered whether what we know about human history is truly accurate? Or is it just a small fragment of a much larger picture that we have yet to fully see? Because across the world, from ancient tombs buried for thousands of years, to fossils lying deep beneath the earth, and even mysterious structures that far exceed the understanding of early human civilizations, everything is gradually revealing truths that have left scientists stunned. There are skeletal remains that tell the stories of forgotten massacres. There are creatures once thought to exist only in legends, now discovered with clear evidence. And there are also structures that, even to this day, we still cannot fully explain. Who built them and how? Hearing this, do you feel a slight chill? And are you curious to know what discoveries archaeologists have made in recent years that could shake the very foundations of history? If so, then right now, join me as we begin with the very first discovery. 17 decapitated human skeletons in a 2,000-year-old burial site. In the quiet countryside of modern-day England, hidden beneath layers of time, a startling archaeological discovery has recently been revealed near the town of Bury St. Edmunds in Suffolk. Here, within the remains of an ancient Roman cemetery dating back approximately 2,000 years, archaeologists uncovered a total of 52 human skeletons. However, the most shocking detail is not the number itself, but the fact that 17 of these skeletons were missing their heads. The skulls were found separated and deliberately placed beside the bodies, an eerie and unsettling image that hints at ancient funerary rituals that remain a mystery to this day. At first glance, many might associate this with brutal executions, often depicted in Roman-era films. However, archaeologists at the site quickly ruled out this possibility. Scientist Andrew Peachy, who was directly involved in the research, emphasized that this was not the result of violence or capital punishment, but rather evidence of a complex burial ritual, possibly belonging to a local community, perhaps even a cult or a group of migrants who carried their own distinct traditions. The key lies in the marks found on the bones. The cuts were not made while the individuals were alive, but after death, indicating that the decapitation was ritualistic rather than punitive. The incisions are located just behind the jaw, unlike the lower neck cuts typically seen in executions involving swords or axes. This distinction allows researchers to clearly differentiate between ritual death and violent killing. Initial analysis shows that the remains belong to both men and women, including 2 children around 10 years old. Most of them appear to have been healthy adults with well-developed arm and shoulder muscles, suggesting they regularly performed agricultural labor. Some individuals also show traits consistent with craftsmanship or manual trades, reflecting a socially diverse community during the Roman occupation of Britain. Their diet has also been revealed through analysis of their teeth and bone structure. They appear to have been relatively well-nourished, consuming significant amounts of sugar and natural carbohydrates, an uncommon feature among ancient farming communities. This suggests they may have had access to stored foods or imported goods during a time when the Roman economy in Britain was thriving. However, high sugar consumption came with consequences. Poor dental hygiene, tooth decay, and early tooth loss were common among the remains. Although the exact identities of these individuals remain unknown, it is clear they were not outcasts or executed criminals. On the contrary, the careful burial practices, from the deliberate placement of the skulls to the arrangement of objects around the bodies, indicate a certain level of respect for the deceased. They may have belonged to a religious group or tribe with unique beliefs, possibly thinking that separating the head from the body after death would help the soul move on, prevent unwanted reincarnation, or simply serve as a ritual to distinguish the dead from the living. Archaeologists are currently in the process of removing all the skeletal remains from the excavation site for further detailed analysis. Once the research is complete, the remains will be transferred to a local museum for exhibition, education, and long-term study. This is not only a way to preserve a piece of human history, but also a valuable opportunity for the public to explore previously unknown mysteries surrounding funerary practices in the ancient Roman world. This remarkable discovery further confirms that ancient secrets still lie buried beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered. What appears to be an ordinary cemetery may conceal haunting burial rituals, bringing us closer to understanding the spiritual beliefs and perceptions of life and death in the past. And it is in places like this where history, archaeology, and legend intersect, that we truly begin to grasp the vivid complexity of civilizations that existed thousands of years ago. 1,837 skeletons, buried for 75 years, revealing a terrifying secret from the bloodiest battle in history. You know, our history has always been mysterious and fascinating in its own way. Some of its greatest secrets aren't found in books as we might imagine. They lie deep beneath the ground, waiting to be uncovered. And the story of these 1,837 skeletons is no exception. It all began with a very ordinary moment, when Russian workers were simply digging to install a water pipeline. But during the excavation, they unexpectedly discovered something no one could have imagined. A massive mass grave where thousands of people had lain for more than 75 years. At first, they thought it was just a small burial site with a few hundred bodies. But the deeper they dug, the clearer and more terrifying the truth became. It wasn't just a few hundred scattered remains. The number reached 1,837 skeletons. Yes, you heard that right. Exactly 1,837, and all of them were German soldiers, lying side by side in a space about 131 yards long, 7.7 yards wide, and 2.2 yards deep in the Angarsky district of Volgograd, the city once known as Stalingrad. But what makes it even more haunting is that they were not alone. Mixed among the human remains were the bodies of horses, companions of the battlefield that had also fallen in that brutal conflict. All of them, humans and animals, were buried hastily at a time when death came too quickly and in such overwhelming numbers that no one had the time to organize proper burials. At this point, you might be wondering, what could have caused thousands of people to be buried together in such a way? The answer lies in a name that alone can send chills through history. The Battle of Stalingrad, the bloodiest battle of World War II, where nearly 2 million people lost their lives. The German 6th Army alone once had more than 240,000 soldiers, but in the end, only about 5,000 survived to return home and more than 147,200 were killed, and another 91,000 were taken prisoner. It was not just a military defeat, but the complete collapse of an entire force. According to Michael Jones, author of a book on the Battle of Stalingrad, when Soviet officer Vladimir Gelfand arrived in the city in March 1943, the scene before him was nothing short of hell. Bodies lay everywhere. The city was reduced to rubble, and many corpses had not even been buried. It was under such circumstances that mass graves like this were created, not out of respect, but out of necessity. People were forced to bury the dead quickly to prevent disease, to continue fighting, and simply to survive. Yet even amid the cold brutality of war, a faint glimmer of hope remained. Many German soldiers still carried metal identification tags when they died, the only clue that allows modern archaeologists to identify them today. This offers some measure of comfort to their families, as there may still be relatives in Germany who waited for decades, never knowing what happened to their loved ones. Now, at least, they can finally learn the truth. However, not everyone agrees that these remains should be given proper reburial. Some Soviet veterans, including hero Mikhail Borisov, strongly opposed the idea. He argued that German soldiers who had caused immense suffering, killed countless people, and enslaved millions did not deserve to be honored on this land. And what about you? If you stood before these 1,837 skeletons, people who were once enemies but are now nothing more than anonymous remains, how would you choose to see them? Forgive or remember so that history is never repeated. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. As for me, I believe the answer may not lie in right or wrong, but in how each of us chooses to face history, a past that, though buried, has never truly rested. Mummy bathing in a glacier high in the mountains. Imagine this. One day you're climbing Pico de Orizaba, the highest peak in Mexico, rising to about 18,406 feet above sea level. A mountain of breathtaking beauty, yet full of challenges. What comes to mind? Exhaustion or a poetic, awe-inspiring view? Pico de Orizaba, also known as Orizaba Peak, is located about a 5-hour drive from Mexico City. Recently, researchers discovered a remarkably well-preserved mummy in a glacier on this very mountain. What's most unusual is that the individual was not wearing specialized climbing gear, but rather ordinary clothing, the kind of everyday clothes we all wear. This immediately raises an important question. Was this person truly a climber, or is there another story behind their death? The mummy was found approximately 1,000 feet below the summit. What's even more striking is that despite being exposed to the harsh conditions of a glacial environment for a long time, the body remains exceptionally well preserved. As soon as this discovery was announced, it sparked a wave of speculation among both scientists and the public. Initially, many linked the body to 3 explorers who went missing more than 55 years ago while attempting to summit Pico de Orizaba. 2 of those climbers had already been found, so this could have been the third. But is that really the case? That theory soon faced challenges. The location where this mummy was discovered is completely different from where the other 2 bodies were found. More importantly, the clothing does not match that of experienced mountaineers. This led scientists to a new question. If this wasn't one of the missing climbers, then who was it? After further consideration, another hypothesis emerged, one that seems more convincing. It's possible that this individual was a victim of a plane crash that occurred on Pico de Orizaba in 1990. If this theory proves true, the story behind this mummy becomes even more mysterious and unexpected. However, nothing can be confirmed yet. So what do you think? Was this mummy a victim of that plane crash, or part of an entirely different mystery we have yet to understand? As for me, no matter what the truth turns out to be, this discovery alone is enough to send chills down my spine. 15 skeletons carefully arranged for 5,000 years, a chilling secret of an entire family wiped out. As you know, ancient graves have always been a fascinating subject for those who love exploration, especially for those passionate about uncovering artifacts and the hidden truths of the past. Because some graves don't just bury the dead, they bury stories that have never been told. And near the village of Košice in Poland, archaeologists accidentally uncovered one such secret, one so haunting that anyone who hears it is left speechless. Back in 2011, during an excavation at the site, researchers discovered a mass grave dating back more than 5,000 years. At first, it seemed like many other archaeological finds, but the deeper they investigated, the more they realized this place was anything but ordinary. Beneath the soil lay 15 skeletons, mostly women and children, resting as if they were asleep, yet bearing clear signs of violent deaths. The first shocking detail was the condition of the remains. Every victim had a fractured skull, a clear indication of a brutal massacre. Yet paradoxically, their bodies were not discarded in chaos. Instead, each individual was carefully arranged, placed neatly, and even buried with familiar personal belongings. Doesn't that seem strange? If attackers were responsible, they certainly wouldn't have taken the time to do this. So who buried them? The answer began to emerge through DNA analysis. Scientists discovered that all 15 individuals belonged to the same extended family, spanning 3 generations. Among them were 8 males and 7 females, but the majority were women and children, the most vulnerable members. One particularly heartbreaking detail lies in how they were buried. A single adult man was placed between a woman and a young boy, as if still trying to protect his family even in death. A 2-year-old child was not buried beside their parents, but instead next to other close relatives, as if to ensure the child would not be alone in eternal rest. There was also another unusual case. One woman showed no biological relation to anyone else in the grave, yet she was buried next to a young man. This has led researchers to believe they shared a close bond, perhaps love, or a deep connection that history can no longer record. Further analysis revealed that the massacre likely occurred between 2880 and 2776 BC, belonging to the globular amphora culture, an ancient Indo-European cultural group. According to Niels Johansson, co-author of the study and an archaeologist at Aarhus University, it is very likely that while the men of the family were away, an attacking group suddenly struck. What followed was a tragedy in which those left behind, mainly women and children, had no ability to defend themselves. The true reason behind the massacre may never be known. However, researchers suggest it could be linked to cultural conflict. At that time, the globular amphora culture was gradually being replaced by another rapidly expanding culture known as the corded ware culture. In such a context, disputes over resources, land, or power could easily have led to violence. Yet what lingers most in people's minds is not the deaths, but how the living treated the dead. Clearly, they did more than just bury the bodies. They arranged each one with care and emotion, as if trying to preserve a fragment of humanity in a time of chaos. So if you were the one to discover this grave and saw an entire family lying together after thousands of years, what would you think? Is it merely an archaeological discovery, or a reminder that in every era, humanity carries both love and cruelty within it? 41-million-year-old whale fossil reveals an evolutionary mystery, the smallest creature of its kind ever known. What would you think if I told you that there was a time in history when the dry deserts of modern-day Egypt were once the floor of a vast ocean, where strange creatures swam across the very ground we stand on today? Hard to believe, right? I felt the same way at first, but the more I looked into it, the more I realized it's absolutely true. On August 10th, a team of researchers from Mansoura University in Egypt, along with international scientists, announced a discovery that stunned the field of paleontology: the fossil of a completely new species of whale, previously unknown to science. What's remarkable is that this creature went extinct around 41 million years ago. The fossil was found in a place with a very fitting name, the Valley of the Whales, located in Egypt's Fayum province. In ancient times, this region was not a desert as it is today. It was once part of a vast prehistoric ocean that covered much of Egypt and the Western Desert. Isn't that fascinating? Beneath today's scorching sands once existed a thriving marine world, filled with creatures in the process of evolving from land to sea. And this newly discovered whale is one of the living witnesses of that transformation. This species belongs to the Basilosauridae family, an extinct group of ancient whales considered among the earliest ancestors of modern whales as they transitioned from land-dwelling mammals to fully aquatic life. According to renowned Egyptian paleontologist Hesham Salam, the newly discovered whale was named Tutatis rainensis, combining elements of Egyptian history and the location where the fossil was found. The name Tutsitus merges Tut, referring to the famous young pharaoh Tutankhamun, and Cetus, the Greek word for whale. Meanwhile, Rainensis refers to the Wadi El Rayyan protected area where the fossil was discovered. The name also commemorates the 100th anniversary of the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, while celebrating the upcoming opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum in Giza, a symbolic bridge between past and present. Now, back to our main subject. Tutsitus rainensis was not a massive sea monster like those often seen in movies. On the contrary, it measured only about 8.2 feet in length and weighed roughly 412 pounds, making it the smallest whale ever known within the Basilosauridae family. The fossil includes a skull, jaw, hyoid bone, and vertebrae, enough for scientists to partially reconstruct its appearance and lifestyle. From this, they can better understand how whales gradually evolved and adapted to life in the ocean. Isn't it incredible? A whale, an icon of the sea, once had ancestors that lived on land, then slowly learned how to swim, dive, and survive underwater as they do today. This discovery is not just another piece of the evolutionary puzzle. It's also a powerful reminder of how dramatically our planet has changed. What is now desert was once ocean, and creatures we think we understand may have had completely different pasts. History is never truly lost, it is simply waiting to be discovered. 300-million-year-old gear found in coal, evidence of extraterrestrial technology or an unsolved mystery? Some discoveries make people question whether the history we know is truly complete, and the story of the so-called UFO gear in Russia is one of those mysteries, something that sounds like science fiction, yet began with a very ordinary moment. At the time, a Russian man named Dmitry was lighting a fire to keep warm in the cold of Vladivostok, in the Primorsky Krai region, when he accidentally noticed something unusual in a piece of coal. At first, he thought it was just an ordinary fragment of metal, but when he looked closer, its shape made him pause. Imagine this: among chunks of black coal, there appears an object that looks exactly like a mechanical gear, with evenly spaced teeth and a nearly perfect structure. Doesn't that feel out of place? Of course it does, and Dmitry felt the same way. Sensing something unusual, Dmitry took the object to experts for examination, and from that moment on, the story became stranger than ever. After conducting their analysis, scientists reached a conclusion that shocked many. The object is approximately 300 million years old. That means it existed long before humans ever appeared on Earth. But it doesn't stop there. The composition of this gear makes things even more puzzling. It consists of 98% aluminum and 2% magnesium, a ratio that indicates it is nearly pure aluminum. And as you may know, pure aluminum does not occur naturally in this form. Humans only began producing refined aluminum in 1825. So the question becomes, who or what created this object 300 million years ago? Upon closer inspection, experts noticed that the object resembles a precision mechanical component, similar to a part of a microscope or a gear within advanced technological equipment. This detail has led many to consider a controversial hypothesis. Could this be evidence of extraterrestrial technology? It may sound unbelievable, but if we rule out human origin, what possibilities remain? A lost ancient civilization? Or perhaps intervention from beyond Earth? Some theories suggest that this gear could be part of a device belonging to a UFO, an unidentified flying object that humanity still cannot fully explain. If that were true, it would imply that Earth may have been visited long before humans existed. Of course, science does not easily accept such conclusions. Researchers have conducted further experiments, tests, and analyses in search of a more reasonable explanation. However, to this day, everything remains at the level of hypothesis. No official answer has been confirmed, and that is exactly what makes this story so compelling. 3,400-year-old Bronze Age city suddenly emerges from a lake. Have you ever imagined that an ancient city could rise as if it had just awakened after thousands of years of sleep? Not in a movie, but in real life? If not, then let me take you to an incredible discovery right in the middle of a lake in Iraq. It all began when a prolonged drought caused water levels in the Tigris River to drop rapidly. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a normal weather event. But nature, in its harshness, had unintentionally revealed a secret buried for millennia. As the water receded, ancient walls and stone foundations slowly came into view until an entire Bronze Age city emerged before the eyes of researchers. At that point, a team of German and Kurdish archaeologists quickly arrived at the site. After conducting surveys, they determined that these were the remains of a city dating back around 3,400 years, belonging to the Mitanni Empire, a civilization that once controlled much of northern Mesopotamia and parts of Syria. What was once beneath the flowing waters of the Tigris River now revealed the traces of a vast ancient urban center. This wasn't just a few scattered walls, it was an entire architectural complex, a palace, fortifications, watchtowers, large buildings, and even storage facilities. Because of this, experts believe the site may be the ancient city of Zakiku, an important hub of the Mitanni Empire. What surprised researchers even more was not just the scale, but the level of preservation. Mud brick walls, expected to have long been destroyed by water, were still standing, remarkably intact despite being submerged for more than 40 years. In some places, they even rose several yards high. But here's the important part. This city didn't simply appear on its own. Its reemergence is the result of a much larger issue: climate change. Iraq is currently one of the countries most severely affected. Prolonged drought has led to water shortages, forcing authorities to draw water from the Mosul Reservoir, the largest reservoir in the country, to save crops. And it was this very action that lowered the water level, unintentionally exposing the long-submerged city. However, this discovery comes with enormous pressure. Just imagine, if an ancient city suddenly appears but could disappear again at any moment as water levels rise, what would archaeologists do? They would have no choice but to race against time. In a very short period, researchers managed to map most of the site, identify the city's structure, and excavate several key buildings. In addition to the main palace, they uncovered a massive fortress with watchtowers, monumental structures, and even an administrative complex. Even more remarkably, they discovered ceramic vessels containing more than 100 cuneiform tablets dating back to the Middle Assyrian period. These tablets could serve as the key to unlocking the city's history and clarifying when the Assyrians began to rule the region. You see, just a few lines of ancient writing can potentially rewrite an entire chapter of history. How fascinating is that? But the excitement of discovery didn't last long before concerns set in. Water levels could rise again at any time, and without protection, the entire site could be submerged once more, possibly forever. So, scientists acted quickly. They covered the excavated areas with plastic sheeting and then added layers of gravel to protect the mud brick walls, a temporary but necessary solution to preserve what remains of the past. Ancient skeleton with an arm turned into a deadly weapon. In an ancient cemetery belonging to the Lombards in southern Italy, archaeologists uncovered the unusual remains of a medieval warrior, a man whose amputated arm had been replaced with a combat knife. This discovery not only sheds light on the lives of the Lombards, a tribe that ruled much of Italy from the 6th to the 8th century AD, but also raises intriguing questions about medicine, warfare, and humanity in the post-Roman era. The skeleton was found in a grave among hundreds of others in a large burial site. Notably, beside this man's grave were the remains of a headless horse and several dogs, suggesting he may have been a warrior buried with special rituals, possibly symbolizing loyalty, strength, or social status. Archaeologists estimate that he died between the ages of 40 and 50 at a time when life expectancy was relatively low, especially for those who frequently faced the dangers of war. However, what astonished experts most was the presence of a knife attached to the remaining portion of his right arm, a powerful testament to extraordinary survival and adaptation. Through analysis, researchers determined that the man's right arm had been severed in a single blow, most likely during combat. There is no evidence that he died from this injury, meaning he lived for many years after losing part of his body, something extremely rare in a time before antibiotics and modern medical knowledge. Even more remarkable is that he not only survived, but was able to use a knife as a replacement for his missing hand, likely by securing it to the remaining forearm. This is supported by noticeable wear on his teeth, indicating that he frequently used his mouth to fasten or adjust the weapon. Several theories have been proposed regarding the cause of his amputation: combat injury, an accident, or even punishment. However, given the Lombards' strong warrior culture, the most likely explanation is that he lost his arm in battle. The Lombards were a tribe of northern European origin, known for their combat skills, military discipline, and a social structure centered around a warrior class. They conquered and ruled Italy for nearly 200 years, leaving a lasting impact on both its history and culture. This warrior skeleton, with a weapon integrated into his body, may represent the unyielding spirit of the Lombards in the face of adversity. Yet another aspect that has drawn significant attention from researchers is the evidence that this man received long-term care and support from his community. Surviving an amputation and living long enough to use a prosthetic weapon implies that someone treated his wounds, provided food, and even helped him reintegrate into a life that may have still involved combat. In a society where physical strength was essential for survival, this suggests that the Lombards were not only fierce warriors, but also capable of compassion and care for those who had fought for them. The existence of this man, with his altered body yet unbroken will, stands as powerful evidence of solidarity and humanity in what is often considered a dark period of history. Mysterious ancient burial on a treasure island, 40 people sealed inside giant wine jars. Have you ever imagined that the simple ceramic jars we often associate with storing wine or olive oil could actually be used as coffins for the dead? On the island of Corsica, a small yet mysterious land in the heart of the Mediterranean, belonging to France, archaeologists have recently uncovered a remarkable burial site where more than 40 individuals were interred inside massive amphorae, the type of jars once used to store wine, olive oil, or brine. This is not just an ordinary archaeological discovery. It opens a window into the lives, customs, and development of the island's inhabitants more than 2,000 years ago. The excavation took place in the village of Ile-Rousse, a site where some archaeological traces had previously been found. However, this latest discovery has truly astonished the scientific community. The cemetery has been dated to around the 1st century AD and lies just behind the town's parish, seemingly forgotten for millennia until these ceramic jars were unearthed. According to experts from France's National Institute for Preventive Archaeological Research, INRAP, amphorae are narrow-necked ceramic vessels with 2 handles, widely used in ancient Mediterranean civilizations. Notably, these jars were not originally made as coffins, but as everyday containers for goods like wine, olive oil, or brine. At the time, the people of Corsica imported large quantities of these jars from Carthaginian traders, then later repurposed them for a unique burial practice. In addition, the graves were reinforced or covered with terracotta slabs, materials reused from roof tiles in Greco-Roman architecture, demonstrating a resourceful use of available materials. This further highlights the uniqueness of the cemetery and reflects a clear cultural exchange between the local population and the expanding Roman civilization on the island during that period. Although Corsica had been occupied by the Romans around the 1st century AD, archaeologists believe this was not a Roman cemetery. Instead, it likely belonged to local inhabitants who reused materials from Roman structures for their own burial customs. What makes this discovery even more surprising is its location, in an area long believed to have been sparsely inhabited throughout the island's history. The presence of a complex burial system with a large number of individuals interred in a relatively short period suggests that the population of this settlement was much larger than historians had previously assumed. This raises many intriguing questions about the social development and cultural practices of ancient Corsican people, especially why they chose such an unusual method of burial. Excavations are still ongoing, as researchers continue to uncover more details about this unique ancient cemetery. This discovery further reinforces the idea that Corsica is a true treasure island for archaeology, filled with countless sites and artifacts yet to be explored. Its strategic location along ancient maritime trade routes may once have made it a thriving commercial hub, completely different from its quiet image today. Through these fragments of the past, Corsica is gradually revealing fascinating stories of an ancient civilization few could have imagined, opening new and colorful chapters in the history of the Mediterranean world. 24,800-mile ancient megalithic highway across a continent. Just think about this. At a time when humans had no wheels, no metal tools, and not even a fully developed writing system, they were somehow able to create a road network stretching up to about 24,800 miles, crossing towering mountains, dense forests, and vast deserts. Does that sound impossible? It does, right? And yet, it's true. A truth rooted in the ancient Inca civilization. This road system, often described as a transcontinental highway, actually extends more than 20,000 miles across what are now countries like Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. But what makes it truly remarkable is not just its length, it's how it was built. The Andes Mountains rise with sheer cliffs so steep and treacherous that just looking at them can make you dizzy. But instead of avoiding these obstacles, the Inca went straight through them. They carved tunnels into mountains, cut stone to create narrow paths along cliff edges, where one misstep could send you plunging hundreds of feet into the abyss. No wheels, no draft animals, no machinery, not even modern metal tools. And yet, they managed to connect an empire spanning over 1.16 million square miles, making transportation, communication, and governance incredibly efficient. This road network played a key role in turning the Inca into one of the most powerful civilizations in the Western Hemisphere. According to UNESCO, this is one of the most extraordinary ancient transportation systems ever built. It crosses snow-capped peaks over 19,700 feet high, runs through tropical rainforests, spans fertile valleys, and stretches into arid deserts. But here's where things get even more intriguing for local people. This road is not just a path for travel. A resident of Bolivia once said, "This is not just a stone road, it's a road with a soul." It may sound mystical, but even today, many people walk these routes as a way to recharge their energy, like a journey of both physical and spiritual healing. And if you look more closely, there's something even more astonishing. Nearly all major megalithic structures are located along this network. Massive stone blocks, precisely cut and fitted together without mortar, a technique that still amazes modern engineers. But here's where the mystery deepens. Many studies suggest that some of these megalithic structures are thousands of years older than the Inca civilization itself. This leads to a controversial hypothesis. Parts of this road system may not have been built by the Inca at all, but existed long before them. And when you ask the descendants of the Inca people who built these structures, their answer is even more thought-provoking. We did not build them. So then who did? Was it a lost pre-Inca civilization? An ancient society with technology far beyond what we imagine? Or perhaps the remnants of a legendary civilization like Atlantis? No one has a definitive answer. But one thing is certain. This road network is not just an engineering marvel. It is a massive historical puzzle. It forces us to reconsider everything we think we know about the past and to ask whether ancient humans were truly as primitive as we once believed. Complete skeleton of a nearly 32-foot sea monster awakens after 180 million years beneath a lake. You know, there are creatures that seem like they belong only in legends, but in reality, they once ruled the oceans hundreds of millions of years ago. And sometimes, all it takes is a slight drop in water levels for an ancient monster to reveal itself once again. A powerful example of this happened in 2022. While researchers were draining water to improve wildlife habitats at Rutland Water in the Midlands of England, they accidentally uncovered a massive skeleton of an ancient marine dragon, an ichthyosaur that had lain undisturbed for 180 million years. The skeleton measured up to 31.8 feet long, resting almost perfectly preserved beneath the muddy lakebed. The skull alone weighed about 1 ton. When it was lifted from the ground, it didn't just amaze with its size, it left everyone at the scene in disbelief. The first person to discover it, Joe Davis, shared that when he saw the skeleton being lifted by machinery, he was truly shocked. Standing about 5 feet 11 inches tall, he said that next to the creature, it felt like facing something far beyond imagination. And he wasn't the only one. According to paleontologist Dean Lomax, this is one of the greatest discoveries in the history of ichthyosaur research in Britain. While many fossils had been found before, none were as large and as complete as this one. So what exactly is an ichthyosaur? It was an ancient marine reptile that first appeared around 250 million years ago and went extinct about 90 million years ago. Although it looked similar to a dolphin, it was actually a formidable predator of the prehistoric oceans. With a streamlined body and incredible speed, it could reach up to about 22 miles per hour, fast enough to chase down prey in ancient seas. And these creatures were far from small. Some individuals could grow up to 82 feet long, larger than many modern whales. Just imagine a creature like that once swimming above what is now dry land. Doesn't that send chills down your spine? Of course, this was not the first time ichthyosaur remains had been found at Rutland Water. Back in the 1970s, during the construction of the reservoir, 2 incomplete skeletons were also discovered. But it wasn't until 2022, when this nearly intact specimen was excavated, that the picture of marine life during the Jurassic period became much clearer. What excites scientists the most is not just its size, but its exceptional state of preservation. From the skull to the spine and even smaller bone details, nearly everything remained in its original position. This gives researchers a rare opportunity to study its body structure, movement, and even hunting behavior in greater detail. You see, from just one skeleton, an entire lost world can be brought back to life. And perhaps the most fascinating thought is this: what we see today is only a tiny fragment of the past. Beneath the ground, beneath lakebeds, and within ancient layers of rock, there may still be countless other creatures waiting to be discovered. Do you think so too? That history has never truly died, it's simply lying in wait, ready to rise again at the right moment. Strange fossils in the Sahara Desert. Scattered across the Earth, fossils are traces of organisms from ancient geological eras that were buried and preserved within the planet's crust. And although fossils are found worldwide, the Sahara Desert is home to some of the oldest, largest, and most mysterious ever discovered. These ancient remains offer deep insight into the history of our planet and its many life forms, including humans. One of the earliest and most mysterious discoveries is the fossil of a giant crocodile. In 2014, paleontologists uncovered the skeleton of one of the largest crocodiles ever found. Named Megalithic rex, this prehistoric monster was twice the size of any crocodile alive today. It weighed at least 6,600 pounds and measured about 32 feet long. The fossil was buried in Tunisia on the edge of the Sahara Desert. Megalithic rex was likely the top predator in what used to be a body of water separating Africa from Europe around 130 million years ago. Federico Fanti from the University of Bologna, a member of the research team, even described it by saying, "Its skull was as big as an adult human. The skull alone was more than 5 feet long. It was a giant crocodile, so big and powerful that it sat at the very top of the food chain." The next discovery involves a mysterious creature dating back 480 million years. First discovered in the 1850s, it puzzled scientists for decades. But those mysteries were finally resolved in early 2019 when newly discovered, exceptionally detailed fossils from Morocco allowed paleontologists to properly identify it. These life forms, known as stylophorans, resemble decorative shapes with a long arm extending from one side. For a long time, scientists weren't even sure whether they belonged on the animal family tree. However, new research revealed that they are ancient relatives of creatures like starfish, sea lilies, sea urchins, brittle stars, and sea cucumbers. Although these remarkable fossils were excavated near the Sahara in 2014, researchers initially did not realize that some of the 450 specimens included preserved soft tissues. This discovery ultimately resolved a 150-year debate about the place of these strange organisms in the tree of life. Next comes the discovery of a new pterosaur species and an unknown sauropod dinosaur. Finding a new dinosaur species is already rare, but discovering two in a single expedition is a dream for any paleontologist. Yet in 2008, a team made that dream a reality when they uncovered both a new pterosaur and a previously unknown sauropod in the Sahara Desert. The pterosaur was identified from a large fragment of its beak, while the sauropod was represented by a bone over 3 feet long, indicating a herbivorous animal nearly 66 feet in length. This extinct giant lived around 100 million years ago. Pterosaur fossils are especially rare because their bones were light and fragile, perfect for flight, but unlikely to be preserved. Nizar Ibrahim, then a graduate student at University College Dublin and leader of the expedition, stated, "Most pterosaur finds are just fragments of teeth and bones, so discovering a large part of a beak was incredible, and enough to confirm we had a new species." Finally, there is the discovery of the oldest known fossils of Homo sapiens. These were first found by miners in Morocco, who uncovered fragments of a skull at a site called Jebel Irhoud in 1961. Additional bones were later discovered during excavations, along with flint tools and charcoal, indicating the use of fire. Researchers initially estimated the bones to be around 40,000 years old, until paleontologist Jean-Jacques Hublin re-examined a jawbone in the 1980s. While the teeth appeared very similar to those of modern humans, the shape of the jaw seemed more primitive. Using a method called thermoluminescence dating, scientists later determined that the remains were actually about 300,000 years old, belonging to Homo sapiens. However, this claim sparked debate. Anthropologists continue to argue over the exact physical traits that distinguish modern humans from our ancestors. Previously, the oldest widely accepted Homo sapiens fossils were dated to around 200,000 years ago. This new discovery pushes the origin of our species back by an additional 100,000 years. 100,000. My friend, you see, perhaps the most frightening thing isn't what we don't know, but what we think we know that could actually be wrong. Every archaeological discovery is like a new piece of the puzzle, forcing us to reconsider the entire picture of history. So what do you think about that? Do you believe our understanding of the past is still too limited? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to give ancient history a like and subscribe to the channel. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.